My name is Jake, and I'm 25 years old. If you had asked me 6 months ago where I thought my life was heading, I would have laughed bitterly and said, nowhere. I was living in my childhood bedroom in Millbrook, Ohio, a town so small that everyone knows everyone else's business before they know it themselves. The population sign at the town limit still reads 3,847, though I'm pretty sure it's been the same number since 1995. Millbrook is the kind of place where the biggest excitement is Friday night football games and the annual Corn Festival in August. Main Street has 12 storefronts, half of which have been empty for the past decade. We have one grocery store, 2 gas stations, a diner that's been serving the same menu since 1978, and a library that's only open 3 days a week. It's the kind of town that young people dream of leaving and older folks talk about with nostalgic pride. I'd graduated from Ohio State University 3 years earlier with a business administration degree and dreams of working for a major corporation in Columbus or Cleveland. I'd imagined myself in a corner office, wearing expensive suits, making important decisions that affected thousands of people. Instead, I was back in my hometown, sleeping in the same twin bed I'd had since middle school, surrounded by participation trophies and high school graduation photos that seemed to mock my current circumstances. The morning everything changed started like any other disappointing day in my life. I woke up at 11:30 a.m. to the sound of my mother's voice echoing through the thin walls of our 2-story colonial house on Maple Street. She was on the phone with her sister Linda, and I could hear every word through the heating vent that connected my room to the kitchen below. "I don't know what to do with Jake anymore," she was saying, her voice carrying that familiar tone of exasperation that had become as common as the morning coffee brewing downstairs. "He's been out of work for 3 months now, and all he does is sit in that room playing video games and applying for jobs that never call him back." I rolled over in my bed, pulling the pillow over my head, but her words still found their way to my ears like unwelcome visitors. The conversation continued, each word feeling like a small dagger to my already wounded pride. 25 years old, Linda. 25. When your father was 25, he already had his own business and was supporting a family. Jake can't even keep a job at the grocery store. I'm starting to think maybe he's just not cut out for the real world. The grocery store. She was referring to my last job at Henderson's Market, where I'd worked for exactly 4 months before getting laid off due to restructuring. Translation: they hired 2 part-time teenagers who would work for half my wage and no benefits. The manager, Mr. Kowalski, had been apologetic when he gave me the news, explaining that it wasn't about my performance, it was about the bottom line. "You're a good worker, Jake," he'd said, avoiding eye contact as he handed me my final paycheck. "If things pick up, you'll be the first person I call." That was 3 months ago, and the phone had never rung. I sat up in bed, running my hands through my unwashed hair. My room looked like a tornado had hit it, clothes scattered across the floor, empty pizza boxes stacked on my desk next to my computer, and job rejection emails filling my inbox like digital disappointments. The October morning light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the cluttered space that had become both my sanctuary and my prison. The walls were covered with reminders of better times. My high school diploma, a photo of me in my cap and gown at Ohio State graduation, a certificate from when I'd been student council president my senior year. There was even a framed newspaper clipping from when I'd organized a fundraiser for the local animal shelter, raising over $3,000 in a single weekend. Looking at these remnants of past achievements only made my current situation feel more pathetic. My phone buzzed with a text from my ex-girlfriend, Sarah. "Saw your mom at the grocery store. She looked stressed. How are you holding up?" The message sat there on my screen like a question I wasn't ready to answer. Sarah and I had dated for 3 years, and for most of that time, I genuinely believed we'd end up married. We talked about moving to Columbus together, finding jobs in the same city, building a life that extended beyond the boundaries of Millbrook. She'd been patient with my job search initially, supportive and encouraging, but as the months dragged on and my prospects remained dim, I could see her patience wearing thin. "I love you, Jake," she'd said the night she broke up with me, tears streaming down her face as we sat in my car outside her apartment. "But I can't keep waiting for you to figure out your life. I need someone who's moving forward, not someone who's standing still." I didn't respond to her text. What could I say? That I was holding up fine? That everything was going according to plan? That I wasn't slowly drowning in a sea of my own inadequacy? The house fell silent, which meant Mom had finished her phone call. I knew what was coming next. The inevitable confrontation that had become our daily routine. I could practically time it. 30 seconds for her to climb the stairs, 10 seconds of hesitation outside my door, and then the knock. Knock, knock, knock. "Jake, we need to talk." "Come in, Mom." The door opened slowly, and there she stood. Margaret Thompson, 52 years old, wearing her favorite blue cardigan, and that expression that mothers perfect when they're about to deliver bad news, wrapped in good intentions. Her graying hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her green eyes, the same color as mine, held a mixture of love and frustration that I'd grown accustomed to seeing. She looked older than her years, I realized. The stress of worrying about me had etched new lines around her eyes and mouth. My father worked long hours at the manufacturing plant, and my mother bore the brunt of dealing with what she saw as my situation. She was the one who fielded questions from concerned relatives, who made excuses to neighbors, who asked about my job search, who lay awake at night wondering where she'd gone wrong as a parent. "Honey, I just got off the phone with your Aunt Linda and..." I heard. She paused, her mouth forming that small O shape that appeared whenever she was caught off guard. "You heard? The heating vent carries sound, Mom." I heard everything. A flush of embarrassment colored her cheeks. "Oh, Jake, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to hear that. I'm worried about you. We both are." She stepped into the room, carefully navigating around the obstacles of my messy lifestyle. I watched her take in the chaos, the unmade bed, the clothes on the floor, the general air of someone who had given up on maintaining any semblance of order. Her expression shifted from embarrassment to something that looked like grief. "Jake, I'm worried about you. We both are. Your father and I have been talking, and we think maybe it's time for some tough love." Tough love. The phrase that every struggling adult child learns to fear. I sat up straighter, preparing myself for whatever ultimatum was coming. In the back of my mind, I'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. I'd seen the looks my parents exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room, the way they'd grown quieter and more tense as my unemployment stretched from weeks into months. "We're not kicking you out," she said quickly, as if reading my mind. "But we are going to start charging you rent. $500 a month starting next week." $500. The number hit me like a physical blow. I had exactly $47.82 in my checking account and no job prospects on the horizon. My savings account, which had once held the modest nest egg I'd built up during my final year of college, had been slowly drained over the past few months as I'd paid for gas, food, and the occasional desperate attempt to improve my job prospects. A new suit for interviews, a premium LinkedIn subscription, a career coaching session that had cost me $200 and yielded nothing but generic advice I could have found on the internet. "Mum, I don't have $500. I barely have $50. "Then you need to find a job, any job. McDonald's is hiring, the gas station on Route 9 has a help wanted sign, and Mrs. Peterson at the library mentioned they might need someone for part-time work." "Those jobs pay minimum wage, Mom. Even if I got one of them, I'd barely be able to afford rent, let alone save money to get my own place." The words came out more defensive than I'd intended, and I could see her jaw tighten in response. This was familiar territory for us. The circular argument about my job search, my standards, my unwillingness to take just any job while I waited for something better to come along. She sat down on the edge of my bed, the mattress creaking under her weight. "Jake, I love you. You know that, right? But you're 25 years old and you're acting like you're 15. You graduated from Ohio State with a degree in business administration. You're smart, you're capable, and you're wasting your potential. I've been trying. Have you really? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. Because, from where I sit, it looks like you've given up. You apply for a few jobs online, get rejected, and then spend the rest of the day playing video games and feeling sorry for yourself. Her words stung because they contained more truth than I wanted to admit. I'd been going through the motions, sending out half-hearted applications and hoping something would stick. But the constant rejection had worn me down, and each thanks but no thanks email felt like another confirmation that I was, indeed, worthless. The worst part was that I could see the disappointment in her eyes. This wasn't the life she'd imagined for me when she'd driven me to Ohio State for my freshman year, both of us excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. She'd bragged to her friends about her son, the college graduate, the first person in our family to earn a 4-year degree. Now, 3 years later, that same degree felt like an expensive piece of paper that couldn't even get me a job at the local fast food restaurant. Your grandmother would be disappointed in you. That hit differently. Grandma Rose had been my biggest supporter, my confidant, and my source of unconditional love. She'd passed away 2 years ago, and not a day went by that I didn't miss her encouraging words and warm hugs. She'd always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. She'd been the one who'd helped me with my college applications, who'd celebrated every small victory, who'd told me I was destined for great things. "Don't bring Grandma into this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She always said you had something special inside you, Jake. She said you were going to surprise everyone someday, but I don't think she meant by becoming a professional couch potato." The words hung in the air like an accusation. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to explain that the job market was tough and that I was trying my best. But the truth was, I wasn't trying my best. I was trying just enough to avoid feeling completely worthless, but not enough to actually change anything. "I'm going to start looking for work today," I said, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. "Good. And Jake, you have 2 weeks to find something. After that, if you can't pay rent, we'll need to have a different conversation." She stood up, smoothing her cardigan, and walked toward the door. Just before she left, she turned back to me. "I know you think I'm being harsh, but I'm doing this because I love you. Your father and I won't be around forever, and you need to learn how to take care of yourself. Grandma Rose spoiled you, and maybe we did too, but the real world doesn't care about your potential. It only cares about what you actually do." The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the weight of her ultimatum. I looked around my room, really looked at it, and saw it through her eyes. The mess, the empty food containers, the general air of someone who had given up on life. When had I become this person? When had I stopped trying to be the man I'd once imagined I could become? The afternoon sun was starting to fade when I finally forced myself to get up and face the day. I showered for the first time in 3 days, put on clean clothes, and sat down at my computer to begin what I knew would be another futile job search. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the ultimatum. Maybe it was the shame of overhearing my mother's phone call. Or maybe it was just the accumulated weight of 3 months of failure finally reaching a breaking point. I opened my laptop and began applying for jobs with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. Customer service representative at a local insurance company, warehouse worker at a distribution center 20 miles away, retail associate at 3 different stores in the mall, sales clerk at an electronics store, even a position as a dog walker for a pet service company. Each application required customizing my resume, writing a cover letter, and filling out lengthy online forms. It was tedious work, and I found myself getting frustrated with the process. How many times could I describe my excellent communication skills and strong work ethic when I was sitting in my childhood bedroom, unemployed and desperate? But I kept going. Application after application, each one a small act of hope in the face of mounting despair. By the time I stopped for dinner, I'd submitted 12 applications, more than I'd done in the previous 2 weeks combined. My father was home from work when I came downstairs, and I could tell from his expression that my mother had filled him in on our conversation. Robert Thompson, 55 years old, had worked at the same manufacturing plant for 27 years. He'd started on the factory floor and worked his way up to a supervisory position, earning respect through consistent performance and unwavering reliability. He'd never been unemployed for more than a few days in his entire adult life, and my current situation was as foreign to him as rocket science. "Your mother told me about the rent situation," he said, muting the television as I entered the living room. "I want you to know that this isn't about the money, son. It's about responsibility." "I know, Dad. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do." He leaned forward in his recliner, his hands clasped together. "When I was your age, I had a mortgage, a car payment, and a baby on the way. I worked double shifts when I had to, took on weekend projects, did whatever it took to provide for my family. I never had the luxury of taking 3 months off to find myself. I'm not taking time off to find myself. I'm unemployed. There's a difference between being unemployed and being unwilling to work. Every fast food restaurant in town has help wanted signs. The construction company on Industrial Avenue is hiring. Hell, the town is looking for someone to help with maintenance at the park. But you're too good for those jobs, aren't you?" I wanted to argue, but he was right. I had been turning my nose up at jobs that I considered beneath my education level. I'd spent 4 years in college earning a business degree, and I'd convinced myself that I deserved better than minimum wage work. But what good was a degree if it wasn't opening any doors? "I applied for 12 jobs today," I said, hoping to demonstrate that I was taking the situation seriously. "What kind of jobs?" "All kinds. Retail, warehouse work, customer service. I even applied to be a dog walker." Something in his expression softened slightly. "That's good, son. That's a start. I'm going to keep applying until I find something. I'll take whatever I can get." "I hope so, Jake. I really hope so. Because your mother and I are proud of you when you're trying. We're disappointed in you when you're not. Right now, you're finally starting to try again." That evening, I continued my job search with renewed determination. I expanded my search radius to include towns within a 30-mile radius of Millbrook, applied for positions I'd previously considered beneath me, and even started looking at opportunities that would require me to relocate. The desperation was setting in, but so was a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. By the time I went to bed that night, I'd submitted 17 applications. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd done in the previous month combined. As I lay in the darkness, listening to the old house settle around me, I thought about my grandmother's words from years past. "Jake, you've got something special inside you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." But what if she was wrong? What if I was just another college graduate who'd overestimated his own potential? What if my mother was right and I really was useless? The questions followed me into sleep, where they mixed with dreams of job interviews and rejection letters and the disappointed faces of everyone who'd ever believed in me. I woke up the next morning with a sense of determination that surprised me. Maybe it was the ultimatum, maybe it was the shame of being overheard, or maybe it was just the accumulated weight of failure finally reaching a breaking point. Whatever it was, I knew that today had to be different. I spent the morning refining my resume, researching companies in the area, and preparing for the phone calls I hoped would come. I even cleaned my room, making my bed for the first time in weeks, and organizing the chaos that had accumulated around me. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant, a sign that I was ready to start taking control of my life again. The first call came at 2:30 p.m. Peterson's auto shop needed someone for basic maintenance work and customer service. The pay was $12 an hour, and the hours were Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. It wasn't the business career I'd once imagined, but it was honest work, and it would help me pay the rent my parents were now charging. "Can you come in for an interview tomorrow morning?" the voice on the phone asked. "Absolutely," I replied, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "What time works best for you? How about 10 a.m.? Ask for Bill Peterson when you get here. I'll be there. Thank you for this opportunity." As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just hope for a job or hope for financial stability, but hope for a future that I could build with my own hands. It wasn't the corporate career I'd once imagined, but it was a start. And sometimes a start is all you need to change everything. 3 days after my mother's ultimatum, I was sitting in the waiting room of Peterson's auto shop, wearing my best interview clothes and trying not to sweat through my shirt. The shop smelled like motor oil and old coffee, and the walls were decorated with calendars featuring vintage cars and inspirational quotes about hard work and determination. The waiting area was small but clean, with 4 plastic chairs arranged around a coffee table covered in automotive magazines. A bell above the door chimed every time someone entered, and I could hear the sounds of work coming from the garage. Air tools hissing, metal clanging, and the occasional burst of laughter from the mechanics. It was the sound of productivity, of people doing meaningful work, and it made me both nervous and hopeful. I'd spent the previous evening researching everything I could about Peterson's auto shop. It had been family-owned for 25 years, had an excellent reputation in the community, and specialized in both routine maintenance and complex repairs. The owner, Bill Peterson, had started the business after working as a mechanic at a dealership for 15 years. He'd built it from a one-man operation into a shop that employed 6 people and served customers from 3 counties. "Mr. Thompson?" A burly man in his 50s emerged from the back office, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. "I'm Bill Peterson. Thanks for coming in." Bill Peterson was exactly what I'd imagined a small-town mechanic would look like. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying hair and hands that showed the evidence of decades of hard work. His face was weathered but kind, and when he smiled, I could see the genuine warmth that probably explained why his business had been so successful. I stood up, extending my hand for a handshake. "Thank you for considering me, Mr. Peterson. Well, let's see what you're made of. You ever worked on cars before?" "Not professionally, but I've helped my dad with basic maintenance on our family cars. Oil changes, tire rotations, that sort of thing." He nodded approvingly. "Good. A lot of young people your age don't even know how to check their oil. Follow me." He led me through the shop, past 2 cars up on lifts, and a third with its hood open. The place was busy, phones ringing, tools clattering, and the constant hum of activity that comes with a successful small business. I could see 3 mechanics working on different vehicles, and there was a steady stream of customers coming and going. "This isn't glamorous work," Bill said, stopping next to a workbench covered in tools. "You'll be doing oil changes, basic maintenance, helping the mechanics with whatever they need. Starting pay is $12 an hour, and if you work out, we'll talk about raises after 90 days. $12 an hour. It wasn't much, but it was honest work, and it would help me pay the rent my parents were now charging. More importantly, it was a start, a way to prove to myself and my family that I wasn't completely useless. "I'll take it," I said, perhaps too eagerly. "Hold on there, son. I haven't offered it to you yet." Bill smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling with amusement. "I want to see you change the oil on that Honda over there. Show me what you know." The Honda Civic was about 10 years old, well maintained but showing its age. Bill handed me a clipboard with the work order and pointed toward the tool rack. "Everything you need is right there. Take your time, ask questions if you have them, and let me know when you're done." I'd changed oil before, but never with someone watching and evaluating my every move. My hands were slightly shaky as I positioned the drain pan and located the oil drain plug. The first challenge was getting the car up on the lift. I'd never operated a hydraulic lift before, and Bill had to show me the proper positioning and safety procedures. "Safety first, always," he said as we raised the car. "A car falling off a lift can kill you faster than you can blink. Never rush, never take shortcuts, and always double-check your work." Once the car was secure, I began the oil change process. I removed the drain plug carefully, watching as the old oil flowed into the pan. The oil was dark and thick, clearly overdue for changing. While it drained, I located the oil filter and began the process of removing it. This was where I made my first mistake. I tried to remove the filter without properly positioning a drain pan underneath it, and when it came loose, oil spilled all over the floor. Bill watched silently as I scrambled to clean up the mess, his expression unreadable. "Happens to everyone," he said finally. "What did you learn?" "Always position the drain pan to catch any spillage from the filter," I replied, feeling my face burn with embarrassment. "Exactly. Keep going." I installed the new filter, being careful to apply a thin layer of oil to the rubber gasket as my father had taught me. Then I replaced the drain plug, making sure not to over-tighten it. Another lesson learned from helping my dad over the years. "How much torque on that drain plug?" Bill asked. I paused, realizing I didn't know the specific torque specification. "I'm not sure of the exact number, but I know it should be snug without being over-tightened. 25 foot-pounds for most Honda drain plugs, but you're right about the principle. Snug, but not over-tightened. Over-tightening can strip the threads in the oil pan, which is an expensive repair." We lowered the car, and I added the new oil, checking the level with the dipstick to ensure it was correct. The whole process took me about 30 minutes, longer than it should have taken an experienced technician, but I'd completed it without any major disasters. "Not bad for someone with no professional experience," Bill said when I finished. "You follow instructions well, you're not afraid to ask questions, and you cleaned up your mess without being told. Those are good qualities in this business." "Thank you, sir. You made a mistake with the filter, but you learned from it. That's what matters. Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning. The key is not making the same mistake twice." He paused, studying me with those experienced eyes. "I'll be honest with you, Jake. This isn't the kind of job most college graduates want to do. It's hard work, it's dirty, and it doesn't pay as much as sitting behind a desk. Why do you want to work here?" It was a fair question, and I decided to answer honestly, because I need a job, and I need to prove to myself that I can succeed at something. I've been unemployed for 3 months, and I'm tired of feeling useless. I'd rather be learning something new and contributing to something meaningful than sitting at home feeling sorry for myself. Bill nodded slowly. "That's a good answer. The job is yours if you want it. I want it." "Good. You start Monday morning at 7. Don't be late, and don't call in sick unless you're actually sick. We have customers depending on us, and reliability is everything in this business." I left Peterson's auto shop feeling better than I had in months. It wasn't the business career I'd once imagined, but it was employment, and that was something. I drove home through the familiar streets of Millbrook, past the high school where I'd once been student council president, past the park where I'd played Little League baseball, past all the landmarks of a childhood that seemed both distant and immediate. My mother was in the kitchen when I walked through the front door, preparing dinner and humming softly to herself. I could see the question in her eyes before she even spoke. "I got a job," I announced. The smile that spread across her face was worth every drop of motor oil that would inevitably end up under my fingernails. "Oh, Jake, that's wonderful. Where?" "Peterson's auto shop. I start Monday morning at 7. She set down the wooden spoon she'd been stirring with and came over to hug me. It was the first time we'd hugged in months, and I realized how much I'd missed her approval and support. "I'm so proud of you, honey. I knew you could do it. It's just changing oil, Mom. It's not exactly a career." "Every career starts somewhere," she said, pulling back to look at me. "Your father started on the factory floor, and look where he ended up. Management, good benefits, respect from his co-workers. You have to start somewhere. Bill Peterson seems like a good man to work for. He's been running the shop for 25 years, and he said he'd teach me everything I need to know." "That's wonderful. And Jake, I'm sorry about what I said earlier this week. I was frustrated and scared, and I said things I didn't mean." "It's okay, Mom. You were right about some of it. I had given up, and I needed a push to get moving again." That evening, my father came home from work to find me researching automotive basics on my laptop. I'd spent the afternoon reading about different types of oil, learning about various car systems, and watching YouTube videos about basic maintenance procedures. "Your mother told me about the job," he said, sitting down in his favorite chair. "Peterson's auto shop is a good place. Bill Peterson has a solid reputation, and he treats his employees well." "I'm nervous about starting," I admitted. "I don't know much about cars beyond the basics." "That's why they call it learning, son. Nobody expects you to know everything on your first day, but they do expect you to show up on time, work hard, and pay attention. I can do that. I know you can. And Jake, I'm proud of you for taking this opportunity. It shows character to be willing to start at the bottom and work your way up." That weekend, I spent time preparing for my new job. I bought work clothes, sturdy jeans, work boots, and several shirts that I wouldn't mind getting dirty. I researched the shop's customer reviews online, all of which were overwhelmingly positive. I even drove by the shop on Saturday afternoon to get a feel for the rhythm of the business. I also called my ex-girlfriend Sarah to share the news. I wasn't sure why I felt compelled to tell her. Maybe I wanted to prove that I was finally moving forward, or maybe I just wanted to hear her voice. "Jake, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I got a job." "That's great." "Where?" "Peterson's auto shop. I'm learning to be a mechanic." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "A mechanic? But you have a business degree." "A business degree that wasn't getting me anywhere. At least now I'm working and learning something useful." "I'm proud of you," she said, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. "I know that wasn't easy for you to accept. It wasn't. But I'm tired of being unemployed and feeling sorry for myself. This is a chance to build something, even if it's not what I originally planned." "You sound different, more confident." "I feel different. I feel like I'm finally moving forward instead of just spinning my wheels." We talked for another 20 minutes about her new job, her new relationship, and our mutual friends from college. It was a good conversation, not romantic, but friendly and supportive. She was happy for me, and I was genuinely happy for her success. Monday morning arrived grey and cold, typical for November in Ohio. I was at Peterson's auto shop at 6:50 a.m., 10 minutes early and ready to work. The shop was already busy. Bill was in his office reviewing work orders, and 2 mechanics were already under the hoods of customer vehicles. "Morning, Jake," Bill called out when he saw me. "Ready for your first day?" "Ready as I'll ever be." "Good. Tommy's going to show you the ropes today. Pay attention, ask questions, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn." Tommy Martinez was in his early 30s, a stocky man with calloused hands and an easy smile. He'd been working at Peterson's for 8 years, having started as an apprentice straight out of high school. He was now one of the shop's most skilled mechanics, specializing in transmission work and engine diagnostics. "Welcome to the team, college boy," Tommy said with a grin. "Don't worry, I'm not going to bust your balls too hard on your first day." The first few hours were overwhelming. There was a system to everything: how to organize tools, how to properly dispose of used oil, how to fill out work orders, how to interact with customers. But gradually, I began to find my rhythm. I was careful, methodical, and eager to learn, and Tommy seemed to appreciate having an assistant who actually listened to instructions. "You're doing good," Tommy said during our lunch break. "A lot of guys come in here thinking they know everything because they watch some videos on YouTube. You're smart enough to know that you don't know everything." "I definitely don't know everything," I agreed, "but I'm willing to learn. That's what matters. Bill likes guys who want to learn. He's been running this shop for 25 years, and he's forgotten more about cars than most people ever know. You stick with him, you'll learn things they don't teach in any school." The afternoon brought my first real challenge. A customer brought in a 2008 Ford F-150 with a mysterious rattling noise that occurred only when the truck was in drive and moving slowly. Bill asked me to help Tommy diagnose the problem, explaining that diagnostic work was one of the most important skills a mechanic could develop. "Diagnosing problems is like being a detective," Tommy explained as we started our investigation. "You have to gather clues, eliminate possibilities, and use logic to find the answer. We spent over an hour going through the possibilities. Was it a loose heat shield, worn suspension components, a failing transmission mount? We checked each system methodically, eliminating possibilities one by one. Finally, Tommy found the culprit, a loose exhaust pipe that was vibrating against the truck's frame when the engine was under load. "See how we worked through that?" Tommy asked as we secured the pipe with a new clamp. "We didn't just guess. We eliminated possibilities until we found the answer. That's diagnostic thinking, and it applies to more than just cars." He was right. The systematic approach to problem solving was something I could apply to other areas of my life. Maybe that's what I'd been missing in my job search. I'd been throwing applications at the wall and hoping something would stick, instead of carefully analyzing what employers were looking for and positioning myself accordingly. By the end of my first week, I was feeling more confident and capable than I had in months. I was learning new skills, earning money, and most importantly, I was proving to myself that I could succeed at something. The work was physically demanding, and I came home each day exhausted and dirty, but there was a satisfaction in it that I hadn't expected. "You look different," my mother observed on Friday evening as I sat down to dinner. "Happier." "I feel different," I admitted. "It's good to have a routine again, to feel useful." "You were always useful, Jake. You just needed to find the right place to be useful." Bill Peterson offered me some overtime this weekend. "A customer has a rush job and he needs extra help." "That's wonderful. It shows he trusts you." "It's just holding tools and cleaning up, but it's something. And the overtime pay will help me save money for my own place." "Take your time with that," my father said. "There's no rush. Build up your savings, get established in your job, and then think about moving out. You're finally moving in the right direction." That night, I went to bed tired but satisfied. I'd put in 5 full days of honest work, learned dozens of new skills, and earned the respect of my co-workers. It wasn't the corporate career I'd once imagined, but it was real, it was mine, and it was a foundation I could build on. I was no longer the unemployed college graduate living in his parents' basement. I was Jake Thompson, automotive technician in training, and for the first time in months, I was proud of who I was becoming. But little did I know that the real turning point in my life was still to come, hidden in a place I'd never thought to look, waiting to change everything I thought I knew about myself and my potential. 2 months into my job at Peterson's auto shop, I had settled into a routine that felt both comfortable and challenging. I was learning something new every day, building calluses on my hands and confidence in my abilities. Bill had been true to his word about the technical school, and I was scheduled to start classes in January. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. The discovery that would change everything happened on a cold Saturday morning in December. My mother had asked me to help her clean out the attic, a task we'd been putting off since my grandmother's death 2 years earlier. Most of Grandma Rose's belongings had been distributed among family members or donated to charity, but there were still several boxes of what my mother called miscellaneous items that needed to be sorted through. "I keep meaning to go through these," Mum said, as we climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. "But every time I start, I get too emotional and have to stop." I understood. Grandma Rose had been the heart of our family, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays, who made the best Christmas cookies, who always had an encouraging word when life got tough. Her house had been sold after her death, and the thought of going through her personal belongings was painful for all of us. The attic was cramped and dusty, filled with boxes labeled in my mother's neat handwriting: Rose's books, Rose's photos, Rose's kitchen items. We worked in comfortable silence, opening boxes and deciding what to keep, what to donate, and what to throw away. Most of the items were exactly what you'd expect: old recipe cards, costume jewelry, paperback novels with cracked spines. It was in the 3rd box that I found the letter. It was tucked inside an old cookbook, The Joy of Cooking, from 1975, wedged between pages of recipes for pot roast and apple pie. The envelope was cream-colored and sealed, with my name written on the front. in my grandmother's familiar handwriting, for Jake, when he needs it most. My hands trembled as I held the envelope. When he needs it most. How could she have known? How could she have predicted that I would need her words of encouragement at this exact moment in my life? "Mom," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. "Look at this." She turned from the box she was sorting through, and when she saw the letter in my hands, her face went pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She left you a letter. Should I open it?" "Of course you should open it. She meant for you to have it." I carefully opened the envelope, trying not to tear the delicate paper. Inside was a single sheet of cream-colored stationery, covered in my grandmother's neat, cursive handwriting. My heart was pounding as I began to read. "My dearest Jake, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer with you, and you're probably going through a difficult time. I'm writing this letter on your 23rd birthday, and I can see that you're struggling to find your place in the world. I want you to know that I believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. I know your mother and father love you, but sometimes their love comes wrapped in worry and expectations. They want you to succeed so badly that they forget to tell you that you're already enough, just as you are. You have a gift, Jake. Not the kind of gift that shows up on a resume or in a job interview, but the kind that makes a real difference in people's lives. You have the ability to see what others miss, to find solutions that others overlook, and to make people feel heard and valued. I've watched you use this gift your whole life, even when you didn't realize you were doing it. I remember when you were 8 years old, and you figured out why Mrs. Henderson's garden wasn't growing. Everyone thought it was the soil or the sunlight, but you noticed that her sprinkler system was watering the weeds more than the vegetables. You didn't just point out the problem, you helped her fix it, and you did it with such kindness that she cried. I remember when you were 16 and you started that tutoring program at school for kids who were struggling with math. You didn't do it for extra credit or to impress anyone. You did it because you saw that those kids needed help, and you had the patience and skill to provide it. I remember when you were 21 and you talked your cousin Danny out of dropping out of college. You spent hours on the phone with him, helping him see that his failures didn't define him and that he had more potential than he realized. These are the moments that define who you are, Jake. Not your job title, not your salary, not what other people think you should be doing with your life. You are a problem solver, a helper, a person who makes things better just by being present. I know you're probably doubting yourself right now. You're probably wondering if you're smart enough, talented enough, worthy enough. Let me tell you something. You are all of those things and more. You just need to find the right place to shine. The world needs people like you, Jake. People who care more about helping others than about impressing them. People who see possibilities where others see problems. People who have the courage to start over when things don't go according to plan. I've left you something else, hidden in the place where we used to have our secret talks. You'll know where to find it when you're ready. Inside, you'll find the tools you need to build the life you're meant to live. Remember, you are not useless. You are not a disappointment. You are not a failure. You are my grandson, and you are capable of extraordinary things. All my love, Grandma Rose P.S. Your mother called you useless once when she was frustrated, but she didn't mean it. She was scared for you, not angry at you. Forgive her, and more importantly, forgive yourself. I read the letter 3 times before I could speak. Tears were streaming down my face, and I felt as though my grandmother was right there in the attic with us, offering the encouragement I desperately needed to hear. "What does it say?" my mother asked gently. I handed her the letter, and she read it silently, her own eyes filling with tears. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of pride, regret, and love. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I never should have called you useless. I was frustrated and scared, and I said something I didn't mean." "I know, Mom, and I forgive you. But more than that, I think I'm finally ready to forgive myself." She was right, about all of it. You do have a gift for helping people. I've watched you your whole life, and you've always been the one who could see what others missed. I thought about the letter, about the specific examples my grandmother had mentioned. I remembered Mrs. Henderson's garden, the tutoring program, the long conversations with Danny. I'd never thought of those moments as significant, but maybe that was the point. Maybe the most important contributions we make are the ones we don't even realize we're making. She mentioned hiding something, I said. Something about the place where we used to have our secret talks. My mother smiled through her tears. The old oak tree in her backyard. You two used to sit under that tree for hours, talking about everything and nothing. But the house was sold. The new owners might not. The tree is still there. I drive by sometimes and I always check. It's still there. That afternoon, I drove to my grandmother's old neighborhood. The house looked different with new siding and a fresh coat of paint, but the massive oak tree in the backyard was exactly as I remembered it. I parked on the street and walked around to the back of the property, hoping the new owners wouldn't mind a stranger poking around their yard. The tree was even larger than I remembered, its trunk easily 6 feet in diameter. I walked around it slowly, looking for any sign of something hidden. On the side, facing away from the house, I found a small metal box partially buried at the base of the tree, covered by fallen leaves and barely visible unless you knew where to look. Inside the box was another letter, along with a small leather journal and a cashier's check for $50,000. $50,000. I stared at the check in disbelief. My grandmother had been comfortable, but she'd never seemed wealthy. She'd lived modestly, drove an old car and shopped at thrift stores. Where had this money come from? The second letter explained everything. Jake, this money represents 40 years of small investments and careful saving. I never spent it because I was waiting for the right moment, the right purpose. That purpose is you. I want you to use this money to start your own business, not because you have to, but because you want to. Not because it's expected of you, but because it's your choice. The journal contains ideas I've collected over the years, problems I've noticed in our community, needs that aren't being met, opportunities that are waiting for the right person to seize them. Some of these ideas might spark something in you, or they might inspire you to think of something entirely different. But remember, the business itself isn't the point. The point is using your gifts to make a difference in people's lives while building something you can be proud of. Take your time. There's no rush. Work at the auto shop. Go to technical school. Learn everything you can. When you're ready, really ready, you'll know what to do. I believe in you, Jake. I've always believed in you. Love, Grandma Rose. I sat under the oak tree for over an hour, reading through the journal and trying to process what had just happened. The journal was filled with observations about the community, problems my grandmother had noticed, and potential solutions. Some of the ideas were simple: a grocery delivery service for elderly residents, a dog-walking business for busy professionals, a handyman service for small repairs and maintenance. Others were more complex: a community center that offered classes and activities for people of all ages, a program that matched skilled retirees with young people who needed mentoring, a business that specialized in helping small companies improve their operations and customer service. As I read through the ideas, I began to see patterns. My grandmother had been watching the community for years, noticing gaps and inefficiencies that others had overlooked. She'd been thinking like an entrepreneur, identifying problems and imagining solutions, and she'd been preparing me for this moment my entire life. I thought about the examples she'd mentioned in her first letter: helping Mrs. Henderson with her garden, tutoring struggling students, counseling my cousin Danny. In each case, I'd seen a problem that others had missed, and I'd found a way to help. I'd been solving problems and helping people my whole life. I just hadn't thought of it as a business skill, but maybe it was exactly that. As the sun began to set, I carefully put the journal and the check back in the metal box and buried it again under the oak tree. I wasn't ready to make any decisions yet, but I knew this discovery would change everything. My grandmother had given me more than money. She'd given me permission to dream big and the confidence to believe I could achieve those dreams. I drove home slowly, my mind racing with possibilities. I had a job I enjoyed, a chance to learn a valuable trade, and now the financial resources to eventually start my own business. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had real options. But more than that, I felt like I finally understood who I was and what I was capable of achieving. The letter had been exactly what I needed to hear at exactly the right moment. My grandmother had known that I would struggle, that I would doubt myself, that I would need her words of encouragement when she was no longer there to offer them in person. She'd planned for this moment, prepared for it, and left me exactly what I needed to move forward. That evening, I sat my parents down and shared the letters with them. My mother cried as she read my grandmother's words, and my father nodded approvingly as he reviewed the journal entries. She was always watching, my mother said, always thinking about how to help people. I should have known she'd find a way to help you even after she was gone. This is incredible, son, my father added. But what are you going to do with it? I'm going to keep working at Peterson's, I said. I'm going to go to technical school and learn everything I can about automotive repair. And then, when I'm ready, I'm going to start my own business. What kind of business? I don't know yet, but I have some ideas, and I have time to figure it out. For the first time in months, my parents looked at me with something other than worry in their eyes. They looked proud, hopeful, and excited about my future. It was a feeling I was just beginning to share. 18 months later, I was standing in the driveway of my own small apartment, loading equipment into the back of my service van. The morning sun was casting long shadows across the parking lot, and I could hear the distant sound of traffic beginning to build as Millbrook woke up for another day. But today wasn't just another day. It was the official launch of Thompson Mobile Auto Service, and I was equal parts nervous and excited. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. The months following my discovery of my grandmother's letters had been filled with careful planning, intensive learning, and gradual building toward this moment. I'd completed the technical school program with honors, earned my ASE certification in 4 different areas, and gained invaluable experience working under Bill Peterson's mentorship. Bill had been incredibly supportive when I'd approached him about my business idea. I'd been nervous about the conversation, worried that he might see my entrepreneurial ambitions as a betrayal or a rejection of what he'd taught me. Instead, he'd listened carefully to my plan and offered both encouragement and practical advice. "It's a solid idea, Jake," he'd said, leaning back in his office chair. "There's definitely a market for mobile service, and you've got the skills to make it work. Plus, it doesn't compete with what we do here. It complements it. For jobs that are too big for mobile service, you can refer customers to us." "I was hoping you'd see it that way," I'd replied. "I'd love to maintain a relationship with Peterson's, maybe even subcontract some work back to you. I'd like that. And Jake, I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've become. When you first walked in here, you were just an unemployed kid with no direction. Now, you're a skilled technician with a business plan and the courage to pursue your dreams." The business planning process had been more complex than I'd anticipated. I'd spent months researching licensing requirements, insurance needs, equipment specifications, and marketing strategies. I'd developed a detailed business plan, complete with financial projections and competitive analysis. The $50,000 from my grandmother had been crucial, but I'd also saved additional money from my job at Peterson's and taken out a small business loan to cover startup costs. I'd purchased a used Ford Transit van and converted it into a mobile workshop, complete with all the tools and equipment I'd need for basic automotive services. The van was painted white with blue lettering. "Thompson Mobile Auto Service, we come to you." It wasn't fancy, but it was professional and functional. The apartment I'd moved into was small but comfortable, a 1-bedroom place on the other side of town with a parking space for the van and a small workshop area in the basement where I could store extra parts and equipment. It was the first place I'd ever lived alone, and the independence felt both liberating and slightly overwhelming. My first customer was Mrs. Henderson, the same woman whose garden I'd helped fix when I was 8 years old. She was now in her 80s and found it difficult to drive to the auto shop for routine maintenance. When I'd called to tell her about my new business, she'd been thrilled. "Oh, Jake," she'd said, her voice warm with affection. "I can't believe you're doing this. It's exactly what people like me need." As I pulled up to her house that first morning, I felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. This was it, the moment when all my preparation would be put to the test. I was no longer Jake Thompson, the unemployed college graduate living in his parents' basement. I was Jake Thompson, business owner and skilled automotive technician. Mrs. Henderson was waiting on her front porch when I arrived, a smile lighting up her weathered face. Her Honda Civic was parked in the driveway, and she'd already popped the hood for me. "I'm so proud of you, Jake," she said, as I began setting up my equipment. "Your grandmother would be thrilled to see what you've become." "I think about her every day," I said, connecting my oil drain equipment. "She's the reason I'm here. She always said you were special. She said you saw things that other people missed." As I worked on her car, I thought about my grandmother's words and the journey that had brought me to this moment. The oil change was routine by now. I'd performed hundreds of them at Peterson's, but this one felt different. This was my business, my customer, my reputation on the line. "How much do I owe you?" Mrs. Henderson asked when I'd finished. $45, I said, handing her the invoice. "That includes the oil, filter, and a basic inspection." She paid me with a check and then surprised me by giving me a hug. "Thank you, Jake. This means more to me than you know. Being able to get my car serviced without having to drive across town, it's a blessing." As I drove to my next appointment, I reflected on what had just happened. I'd provided a service that genuinely helped someone, earned money doing work I enjoyed, and built on the foundation of trust and community connection that my grandmother had taught me was so important. The business grew steadily over the following months. Word spread through the community about the convenience of mobile automotive service, and I soon had more customers than I could handle alone. I hired Eddie, my former co-worker from Peterson's, as my first employee, and we began offering expanded services. The customer base was exactly what I'd expected. Busy professionals who couldn't afford to spend half a day at the auto shop, elderly residents who had difficulty driving, and families with multiple vehicles who appreciated the convenience of having maintenance done at home. But it was more than just convenience. I was solving a real problem in the community, and the personal connections I formed with customers were deeply satisfying. I wasn't just changing oil or rotating tires. I was helping people maintain their independence, save time, and reduce stress in their daily lives. "You've got something special here," said Mr. Rodriguez, my former technical school instructor, when I ran into him at a local parts store. "I've been hearing about your business all over town. People are really impressed with the quality of service you provide." "Thank you. I learned from the best." "You did more than learn. You innovated. You saw a need that others missed and found a way to fill it. That's entrepreneurship at its finest." By the end of my first year in business, Thompson Mobile Auto Service had 14 regular customers, generated over $80,000 in revenue, and established partnerships with 3 local auto parts stores. But more importantly, I'd found my calling. I was using my skills to solve real problems for real people, and I was building something meaningful with my own hands. The personal transformation was equally dramatic. I'd gone from being an unemployed college graduate living with his parents to a successful business owner with his own apartment, a growing company, and a clear sense of purpose. The confidence I'd gained was evident in everything I did, how I carried myself, how I spoke to customers, how I approached challenges. My relationship with my parents had transformed as well. They went from worried disappointment to proud support, and I could see in their eyes that they finally understood what my grandmother had seen in me all along. "You know what I'm proudest of," my mother said one evening as we sat on the porch of my apartment, watching the sunset. "It's not just that you started a successful business. It's that you found yourself. You found your confidence, your purpose, your place in the world. I had help, I said, thinking of my grandmother's letters and the encouragement that had come at exactly the right moment. We all need help sometimes. The key is recognizing it when it comes and having the courage to act on it. I think about Grandma Rose every day. I wish she could see what I've built. She can see it, Jake, and she's proud of you. I know she is. The success of the business had also opened up new opportunities. I'd been approached by other mobile service operators in nearby towns who wanted to learn from my model. I'd even been invited to speak at a small business conference about entrepreneurship and community service. But perhaps the most meaningful development was the expansion of services I was able to offer. I'd partnered with a local senior center to provide free basic maintenance for elderly residents who couldn't afford regular service. I'd started a program that taught basic automotive knowledge to high school students who were interested in learning a trade. I'd even begun offering emergency roadside assistance for people who found themselves stranded with mechanical problems. "You're doing exactly what your grandmother said you would," my father observed one evening when I'd stopped by for dinner. "You're using your gifts to help people and make a difference in the community." "It doesn't feel like work," I admitted. "When you're doing something you love, something that helps people, it energizes you instead of draining you. That's how you know you've found your calling." 1 year after discovering my grandmother's first letter, I returned to the oak tree where I'd found her hidden treasures. The new owners of the house had been kind enough to let me visit periodically, and I wanted to leave something of my own for future generations to find. I wrote a letter to my future children, telling them about their great-grandmother's wisdom and the importance of believing in themselves even when others doubt them. I included a copy of my business plan, some photos of the mobile service van, and a small financial contribution to help them get started on their own dreams someday. Dear future children, if you're reading this, then you've discovered the tradition that your great-grandmother Rose started. She believed in the power of encouragement at exactly the right moment, and she taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone is help them see their own potential. By the time you find this letter, you'll probably be facing your own challenges and doubts. You might be wondering if you're smart enough, talented enough, or worthy enough to achieve your dreams. Let me tell you what your great-grandmother taught me. You are all of those things and more. The business I built started with a simple idea: help people solve problems they didn't even know they had. Your great-grandmother saw this gift in me long before I saw it in myself. She knew that the most successful businesses aren't just about making money, they're about making a difference. Look for the problems that others overlook, listen to the needs that others ignore, find ways to help that others haven't considered, and never be afraid to start small and build gradually. But most importantly, remember that your worth isn't determined by your job title, your salary, or what other people think you should be doing. Your worth is determined by how you treat others, how you contribute to your community, and how you use your gifts to make the world a little bit better. I love you and I believe in you, even though we haven't met yet. Your father and great-grandmother Rose's legacy, Jake Thompson. As I buried the letter under the oak tree, I thought about the cycle of encouragement and support that had brought me to this moment. My grandmother had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She'd seen potential where others saw problems. She'd prepared me for success even when I couldn't see it coming. Now it was my turn to pass that encouragement forward. I drove home through the familiar streets of Millbrook, but this time I wasn't looking backward with nostalgia or regret. I was looking forward with excitement and anticipation. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, my ex-girlfriend who had become a good friend. "Saw your van at the Peterson house today. Mrs. Peterson couldn't stop talking about how helpful you were. She said you're just like your grandmother, always seeing what others miss and finding ways to help." And I smiled as I read the message. She was right. I was like my grandmother, and I was proud of that resemblance. I'd inherited her gift for seeing problems and imagining solutions, her compassion for others, and her belief that one person could make a difference in their community. But I'd also learned something else from her letters and her example: the importance of believing in yourself, even when others doubt you, the value of hard work and persistence, and the power of encouragement at exactly the right moment. As I pulled into my driveway, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. 2 years ago, I'd been unemployed, living in my childhood bedroom and convinced that I was useless. I'd been rejected by dozens of employers, broken up with by my girlfriend, and facing an ultimatum from my parents. But my grandmother had seen something different. She'd seen potential where others saw problems. She'd seen possibility where others saw failure. She'd seen the man I could become, even when I couldn't see it myself. Her letters had arrived at exactly the right moment, carrying exactly the message I needed to hear. She called me capable when I felt worthless, valuable when I felt useless, and worthy of investment when I felt like a lost cause. And she'd been right about all of it. Thompson Mobile Auto Service now employed 4 people, served over 75 regular customers, and had expanded to include basic home maintenance services. I was making more money than I'd ever made before, but more importantly, I was making a difference in people's lives every day. The technical school had asked me to serve as a guest instructor, sharing my experience with students who were just beginning their careers. I'd been featured in the local newspaper as a young entrepreneur to watch, and I'd been invited to join the Chamber of Commerce as their youngest member. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Bill Peterson had nominated me for the state's Outstanding Young Mechanic Award, and I'd won. The award ceremony was held at the state capitol, and my parents, several customers, and even some of my former classmates attended. Jake Thompson represents everything that's good about the automotive industry, Bill said in his nomination letter. He combines technical skill with genuine care for his customers, and he's built a business that serves his community while pursuing his own dreams. As I stood on the stage accepting the award, I thought about my grandmother's words. "You are my grandson, and you are capable of extraordinary things." She'd been right. I was capable of extraordinary things, not because I was perfect, but because I was willing to keep trying, keep learning, and keep believing in the possibility of becoming better. I was no longer the unemployed college graduate living in his parents' basement. I was Jake Thompson, successful business owner, skilled automotive technician, and proud carrier of my grandmother's legacy. But more than any of those titles, I was simply a man who had learned to see his own potential and had found the courage to pursue it. The girl who had once called me useless had been wrong, but she'd also been forgiven. My grandmother's secret letter had proved that I was capable of extraordinary things, not because I was special, but because I was willing to work for what I wanted and never give up on myself. As I sat in my living room that evening, looking at the award on my coffee table and the photos of my business on the wall, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for my grandmother's wisdom, for my parents' tough love, for Bill Peterson's mentorship, and for the opportunity to build something meaningful with my own hands. I opened my laptop and began typing. "Dear Grandma Rose, you were right about everything. The gift you saw in me was real, even when I couldn't see it myself. The encouragement you left me came at exactly the right moment, and it changed everything. I'm not the same person who found your letter 2 years ago. I'm stronger, more confident, and more certain of my purpose. I'm using my gifts to help people, just like you always said I would. But most importantly, I'm happy. Really, truly happy. Perhaps for the first time in my adult life. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Thank you for seeing my potential when others saw only problems. Thank you for preparing me for this moment, even though you couldn't be here to see it. I love you and I miss you, and I promise to pass your wisdom forward to the next generation. Your grateful grandson, Jake." I never sent the letter, of course, but writing it felt like completing a circle, acknowledging the gift I'd been given and the responsibility that came with it. My grandmother had been right. I did have something special inside me. It had just taken the right moment, the right encouragement, and the right opportunity for that something to emerge and flourish. And now, it was my turn to help others discover the same thing about themselves. The transformation was complete. I was no longer the man who had once been called useless. I was the man my grandmother had always known I could become: confident, capable, and ready to make a difference in the world. Her secret letter had proved her right. But more than that, it had given me the courage to prove myself right too.